Welcome back to the show. Let's talk about a couple of one seeds that battled it out in Tuscaloosa over the weekend. Auburn beat Alabama for its 14th quad one win of the season. Tigers held the Crimson Tide well under their three-point shooting percentage, Jacqueline, in the road win. I mean, the Crimson Tide shooting like in the mid-30s, less than 20% on Saturday.
All right, let's talk about Duke because they're on the one line as well. 22-3 overall. Strength of schedule, a little bit of a question for some folks for the Blue Devils, and others say it does not matter. They are 5-3 in quad one wins and undefeated in quad 2, 3, and 4. Coming off of a huge win against Stanford, beating them 106-70, and Duke there in action tonight. Double-digit favorites against Virginia. We mentioned some of the one seeds in action. Getting a look at the resumes, we have Duke and Bama. Auburn, just talked about them, and then of course the Florida Gators there as well. We're looking at all of the best wins. I'm biased, but Florida probably the best one at Auburn in Auburn. We're going to talk about it. So let's welcome in Gary Parrish and Jerry Palm, and we're talking about the one lines: Duke, Bama, Auburn, and Florida. And Jerry, Bama, of course, still on the one line despite just losing to Auburn.
Yeah, in fact, they're still number 2 overall, despite just losing to Auburn, in part because the loss was to Auburn, and in part because Alabama still has a terrific resume with 8 quad one wins, which is second most to Auburn, which just shows you how ridiculous Auburn's resume is. But certainly Duke, the number 3 overall team, doesn't have a resume to match Alabama just yet. So Alabama lost, but stays not just on the top line, but number 2 overall.
And Jerry and I are on the same page here, Jacqueline. I left Alabama at number 2 in my top 25 and 1. And I don't want to argue with you about Florida, if only because you've been winning most of those arguments lately. You've been on the right side of most of these debates. But like Jerry said, Alabama right now is the only team in the country besides Auburn that has at least 8 quadrant one wins and fewer than 5 total losses. They have 3 more quadrant one wins than Florida does right now. So you can put them in a variety of different orders reasonably, but put me in charge, and I've still got it Auburn 1, Alabama 2.
I just want to say, Tommy, despite all of my arguments, they have never been for Florida over Auburn or Bama. It's always been Duke and Tennessee in question, in my opinion.
They finally start coming around a little bit.
No, Auburn and Bama, I agree there. They're, 1 and 2 right there in college hoops. All
right, let's get the guys' thoughts on Wisconsin, which Jerry has put up to the 2 seed. Obviously, recent events has helped catapult them there. But, Jerry, when we talk about the Big Ten, Wisconsin, Michigan, Purdue, and Sparty on that 2, 3, 4 tier.
Yeah, Purdue has been at the top of that tier all the way up until Saturday. Right after they announced the bracket, Wisconsin went out and shot 72% in the second half. Some teams don't shoot 72% in the layup line. 72% in the second half at Mackey Arena, ended up pulling away with a 10-point win. And that is the difference in these two teams' resumes. Wisconsin has a better record, has not played as good a schedule as Purdue, but it's hard to ignore the result that we just saw. And that's the only time these teams will meet unless they see each other in the Big Ten tournament. So, a great win for Wisconsin, and they belong at the top of the list of Big Ten teams right now.
And I think we all knew at some point Purdue was going to miss Zach Edey because it's not sensible to assume that you could lose a 2-time National Player of the Year and it not show up at some point. But it really has shown up inside the arc on the defensive side of the ball this season. Like Jerry said, Wisconsin was incredible in that second half against Purdue, especially inside the arc. 20 of 22 from the game. That's above 90%. Just to put some numbers on it, Purdue was top 70 in the country last season with Zach Edey in 2-point defensive field goal percentage. Now they're in the 300s. That's something that's got to get fixed. On the other side, Wisconsin, the resume speaks for itself. 6-5 in quadrant 1, 13-5 in the first 2 quadrants with 0 losses outside of quadrant 1. I've got Wisconsin up to number 9 in my top 25 and 1 this morning, so not quite in the a 2 seed like Jerry has them, but I'm right there. They would be my first number 3 seed.
GP, let's talk about Memphis because they're in the top 25 and 1 just barely. And I remember talking about this game as they were about to play USF, saying, hey, they kind of control their own destiny here. They get a win there, and then they lose in OT against Wichita State. And from the field, GP, was a big issue for the Tigers.
Yeah, they struggled, and they just had a bad performance, and you're going to have some of those on the road in conference play. The problem for the Tigers is that they can't afford them in the AAC because just about every game you play, equates to a landmine that can blow you up. There's not many buried treasures out there in the AAC for you to find. It's all bad stuff you can stumble into. So just to put some numbers on it right now, Jacqueline, Memphis has 3 quadrant 3 losses. Nobody in the top 25 of the net rankings as of this morning has even 1. Memphis has 3. Nobody else in the top 50 of the net has more than 2. Memphis has 3. And this is going to be a big drag on the resume. Right now, the Tigers have played 13 games in the AAC, and 11 of the 13 have been either quadrant 3 or quadrant 4 opportunities. So this is a difficult thing to navigate for Penny Hardaway when your non-league schedule is tough and you're excellent against it, and then you get to your league schedule and you just cannot afford slip-ups anywhere, because once you get to your league schedule, for every bad thing that happens to you, there is not a place for you to do a good thing to make up for it. So every time, quite literally every time Memphis loses going forward, it's going to cost them in that bracket.
Jerry, let me turn to you now and talk about a couple of 16-10 teams. Why do you have Texas in at the moment but not Georgia?
Yeah, it's just Texas has picked up a big win over Kentucky this weekend, and Georgia lost again to Mizzou. So right now, Texas is just a little bit better than Georgia, and Arkansas is in between them. And those 3 teams are a lot alike. So the differences are really small. It's a quality of a loss or the lack of a quality win. But the bracket is not going to be big enough for those 3 teams. It might not be big enough for more than one of them. So somebody here is going to have to finish strong and put a stranglehold on that bid that they want for the NCAA tournament.
Oh, man. Also, sorry, GP, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I know, Jacqueline, we're going to expand the NCAA tournament someday. We can keep arguing about it, but it is going to happen. But if you ever needed a reminder of why it's unnecessary relative to putting quality teams in the field, it's because Georgia is 2-8 in its past 10 games. 2-8, just 2-10 in quadrant 1, and still probably just 1 win away from getting on the right side of the bubble. It's unnecessary to expand this thing. We are never leaving good teams out of it. We are only putting mediocre teams in.
We're talking about expanding the college football playoff, now potentially March Madness. I mean, who knows? GP and Jerry Palm, we certainly appreciate it. Talking about college hoops, the biggest news, and just a reminder, you can find Jerry's latest bracketology on CBSSports.com. I didn't mean to jump GP, but seeing UNC in the first 4 out always kind of makes my eyebrows go up. And you can hear more from GP alongside Matt Norlander on the Eye on College Basketball podcast. It's where the conversation continues. You can download, follow, listen wherever you get your pods, or watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.